guys, I'm Nichole Dailey, Chef de Cuisine here at Traeger Grills. Today we're going to show you a recipe for a traditional roast turkey. I always like to brine my turkey. I think it gives it a lot of moisture and you can impart a lot of flavor into the meat of the turkey. So what we're going to start with is a quart of water, but you just want your turkey completely submerged. So it might take a little bit more, a little bit less, depends on the size of your turkey. You'll dissolve your sugar and salt in just a portion and then pour it over ice water, and so it cools it down much quicker. So we've got a quart of water here, about a half a cup of salt, and a half a cup of brown sugar. Essentially, this is all you need for a brine. You can use granulated sugar or brown sugar. I like brown just for the flavor. From there, you can add in whatever flavors you like. We're gonna do a little bit of garlic clove. And I'll just throw it all in at once in the beginning. Bay leaves, black peppercorns. We'll just kind of let it steep for a little bit. And then I like to do a little bit of citrus peel. And this is just over medium heat. All you want to do is just dissolve the salt and the sugar. So I just use a peeler and take off just the outside. You don't want too much of the pith. It's really bitter. So we'll do orange peel and lemon peel. You can switch it up and add a little bit of bourbon or whiskey in there. You can flavor your brine with things like apple cider vinegar, wine, soy sauce. You just got to keep in mind that anything you add to it, if it's a high sodium content or it has a lot of acid, it's going to affect your brine. Acid can really start to break down the tissue. So if it's too acidic, your meat will end up kind of like mushy at the end. So we're just going to let that come up to a simmer and wait for the sugar and salt to dissolve. The last thing we want to add to that is a little bit of thyme and rosemary. So this turkey here is about 16 pounds. You always want to go for about a pound of turkey per person. So if you're buying a 16-pound turkey, it's good to feed around 16 people. I'm going to truss this one. I usually put a lot of aromatics and seasonings inside the cavity of the bird. So I want to take this off so we can get in there. All right, so your turkey always comes with the neck, and then up here are all of the gizzards. So this is the heart, the liver, things like that. These are great for stuffing or for flavoring a stock, but I always use the neck for the gravy. So save both of them because they have a good use. And then there's usually a little chunk of fat that's attached on the inside here. I'll just cut that out. You can also roast that and put it in your stock or your gravy if you'd like. You want to make sure there's no ice or anything inside of your bird. Always plan for defrosting time if you're buying a frozen bird. Sitting in the fridge, it'll take a couple of days. So we'll take some of this off, and our bird is good to go. So I've got some cold water here. Once our brine has steeped and the sugar and salt is dissolved, it smells so good. So you'll just take this hot portion and pour it into the cold water and it'll cool it down much quicker. And you want to brine your bird for about 12 hours. The most I would go is just overnight. I wouldn't do it for much more than that. So we'll dunk our bird in, and you just want to make sure it's submerged. So I'll usually do it breast side down, and then I'll weigh the back down with some plates to keep it underneath the water. You just want to make sure you're imparting that flavor to the entire bird. So we're going to transfer this to the fridge, and we're going to let it sit overnight, and then we'll revisit it tomorrow. Okay, so we just pulled our turkey out of the fridge. It's been brining for about 12 hours. Before we pull that out, we're going to get a couple things ready. So we're going to rub an herb butter on this turkey underneath the skin. So we've got a little bit of softened butter here, and then we're just going to use rosemary and thyme and a little bit of minced garlic. So I like to get these things ready before we pull the bird out, just to reduce cross-contamination. So you just strip the leaves off of the rosemary, and same with the thyme. A lot of these stems are really tender, so don't worry if you get a little bit in there, we'll just chop it up. So you can just eyeball it. I've got one big sprig of rosemary here. It's probably a tablespoon and a half maybe, and then about the same of thyme. And we're just gonna mince this so it's really fine. And then we're gonna add it to our room temperature butter. We've got 2 sticks of butter here that are softened. We'll also season it with salt and pepper. And we're gonna slide that right under the skin on the turkey. It helps keep the meat inside really moist, as well as browning the skin. So I just got 3 garlic cloves. We'll just slice through them really quick, and then we'll go the other way and mince. The little tip you can do if you're trying to get your garlic into more of a paste is you can add a little salt to it and then keep mincing, and as you go, the salt will pull out the moisture and start to break the garlic down. And you don't have to do this every time you do minced garlic, but if I'm putting it in something where I want it really incorporated, I'll go for more of a paste. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your knife and kind of crush it. And I'll just run back and forth over this a couple of times until it's where we want it to be. It's gonna be more evenly distributed that way versus just chunks. All right. In goes our garlic. And then we're gonna season this really well. I always use unsalted butter so that I can control the salt content in anything. Just get this nice and incorporated. I always start with a little bit of celery and a couple of carrots and an onion. On the carrots, I usually just wash them, don't bother peeling them. We'll just cut this end off and then just cut it into 1-inch chunks. We're gonna strain this out at the end. We're just trying to flavor that gravy and get as much out of it as we can. And then I use the leaves and all of the smaller stems for this as well, again, because you're just gonna strain it out. And then we'll just cut the root end off here, throw these in the bottom. And our onion, we want it all about the same size. So we'll just take the tip and the root off and then cut it in half. Peel off these first couple layers. And then we'll just do a rough chop, large dice, 1-inch pieces, whatever you want to do. And then we'll use a few garlic cloves as well and some more rosemary and thyme. And again, you're gonna just strain all this out so you can leave the stems. We've got about a quart of chicken stock here. We're just gonna pour it in the bottom of the pan. And then we'll situate our turkey right on top of here. I'm gonna pull this guy out of the brine, and you wanna get off all of the spices or aromatics that have kind of stuck to the skin. And then you wanna make sure the cavity is completely drained. And then you wanna take some paper towels and pat the bird dry. Now to prep our bird, you wanna season every part of the bird, including the cavity. The more you season, the more flavorful it's gonna be. Put a good amount of salt and pepper in here, and then we're gonna stick a couple sprigs of thyme in there and another rosemary. And then I'll take a whole garlic bulb and just cut it in half, and we'll throw that in there as well. Okay, now on to the butter. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna separate the outer layer of skin from the breast that's underneath and the thighs. It's usually easiest if you find a spot towards the legs. It's a little bit separated already. And then you're just gonna go in with your fingers and kind of peel it away from the breast. You don't want to puncture through this outer layer of skin. That's what's gonna protect your meat while it's cooking. So we'll just separate it all the way down. Same on this side. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take this butter a little bit at a time and just slide it underneath the skin. And then you can use your other hand to kind of like massage it down. You wanna cover as much of the bird as possible. And then whatever butter I have left, I'll kind of slide it into the cavity. It's just gonna give your bird that much more flavor and keep it moist. So we're gonna go ahead and truss this. I kind of do it the easy way. I just tuck the wings back in underneath. And then for the legs, we're gonna just take a piece of twine about that long. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna slide it right underneath sort of like the hips. So it's gonna be right here down the middle of the bird. And then you're gonna take your twine and pull it down. What this does is it keeps the skin over the breast and it pulls it together. And then you're gonna cross these over. I'll do a little swoop here, keep it tight. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna go under the legs like this, and then you'll cross them at the top and pull that tight. So then you just take your twine and loop around the legs a couple of times, and then just tie a little knot here, and your bird's ready to go. For the outside, what we're gonna do is we'll just take our olive oil and go lightly over the top and just rub it in. And then you wanna season the whole bird. So we're just gonna go pretty liberally with our salt. Even though it seems like a lot of salt on the exterior, that salt has a long way to go. You've got a big piece of meat to season, so don't be shy with it. And then just a little fine ground pepper. And then we've got our grill preheating outside at 300 degrees. We're gonna pop this guy on and it'll take about 3 to 4 hours. And we'll take it off and let it rest, and then we'll finish our gravy. So we've got our grill preheating. It's been preheating for about 10 or 15 minutes on 300 degrees. We've got turkey pellets in for this one. It's a mix of hickory, oak, maple, and rosemary. Goes really well with the turkey. You could use something else like apple or just straight oak. You can use mesquite for a stronger flavor. We're just gonna stick with the turkey. So you just wanna throw this in the center of the grill. We're gonna come out and check it periodically. We might rotate it and turn it around to make sure it's getting an even brown. We wanna look for an internal temperature of 160 degrees. So it's gonna go for about 3 or 4 hours, but we'll check it around 3. Okay, so it's been about 4 hours. We've rotated our bird around a little bit so the outside is nice and evenly browned. We just temped it. It's about 160 degrees, which is where you wanna pull it off. You wanna make sure you don't wait until 165 because it'll continue to cook once you take it off the grill. Okay, so we've got our bird off the grill. We're gonna let it rest. While it does that, we're gonna make the gravy. First thing we're gonna do on our gravy is make the roux. So roux is just a thickener, and it's equal parts butter and flour. We'll start with our butter first, and you can use different types of thickeners if you'd like. I like the flavor and mouthfeel of roux more. So you wanna do this over a medium-high heat. You're gonna melt the butter until it starts to bubble. This is where you're gonna add the flour in, and you wanna add it and stir right away. It's gonna steam, so it's really hot. You gotta be careful not to burn yourself. And we're just gonna stir this and kind of mash it up so the butter blends with the flour. And it'll go from just smelling like melted butter to like a toasted popcorn. You wanna set this aside so it doesn't continue to cook. And then what we'll do is we're gonna take our bird off of here onto the cutting board to let it rest. And then we're just gonna strain this into our saucepan here. Okay, so we've got our liquid here from the bottom of the pan. You can use a fat separator, or you can just skim the fat off the top. You wanna get as much as possible. So we've got our gravy coming up to a simmer. I've skimmed all the fat off the top. We're gonna add our roux back in to thicken it. I'm gonna add a little bit more turkey stock to this. I know at my family dinners, they always go really heavy on the gravy. So I like to have more than what I expect I will need. So we'll add about a cup to this. Okay, so we're back up to a simmer. We're just gonna add this in a little bit at a time, and you wanna whisk pretty vigorously to try to work all those lumps out. So do it gradually and incorporate a little bit at a time. Make sure the first batch is incorporated before you add any more. So what I look for in a gravy is to coat the back of a spoon. You can see not a lot of it's sticking here. So I'm gonna probably add the rest of this roux and then let it come back up to a simmer again, and we'll check where we're at. You can see much more is sticking to the back of a spoon. When you run your finger down the middle, it stays that way. So we're gonna let this hang out for a minute, and then we're gonna carve our turkey. So our turkey's been resting for about a half an hour. We're gonna go ahead and carve it. One thing I always start with is just by untrussing the bird. I usually tie mine in a bow, so it makes it really easy. So first thing I'm gonna start with is by taking off the legs. You'll just slice through the skin between the leg and the breast, and then I pull it open a little bit, and there's a bone right in here, and you just wanna be to the left of that bone. So you should be as close to the bone as possible, but not hitting it. And then you're gonna slice over the joint here, down to the cutting board, and then you can see where the joint attaches. Sometimes I'll just pop it out, and there's our leg. And then on the legs, I leave the drumsticks, and we'll carve some of the thigh off of here. To take the drumstick off, you can see where the joint is in between these two, and you want to go right between there. You shouldn't be cracking any bones. You shouldn't hear that noise at all. It's just right through the joint. You can leave them whole like this if you'd like, but I like to take it off the bone, so you can see the bone goes from here to this joint. So you're gonna slice right on top of there, and then on either side to kind of pull that bone out. And then I'll lift this side up and just kind of shave it away from that bone. You just wanna make sure with that comes this joint. You don't wanna leave any of that cartilage there. And then once you have the bone out, you can just go straight through it. And you can see because we've let this bird rest, there's some juice on the table obviously, but it's not all filled in my little canal right here. So if you were to take this right off the grill and cut into it, there would be so much that it's like flowing off the table. You want to give it that time to rest so that you don't lose all of that. On the breast, you're going to go right down the center of this bone on the top, and then once you get down here, you can feel the wishbone, and you're just going to go follow the curve of that wishbone right down to the joint. So you can kind of start to pull it away from the ribs here, and I just let gravity kind of do its thing, pull it off, and it'll start to pull itself. And if you see close enough here, you can see that little smoke ring, something that you'll get on the grill and nowhere else. It's beautiful. So then you just cut that side off, and then we'll go do the same over here. Then you're going to take the breasts and just slice them on a diagonal here. And you can see just under the skin all those herbs from that herb butter that we put in there. If you left any extra meat on there, you can kind of pull it all off. You can serve it with this. You can use it for something else, maybe a leftover sandwich the day after. You can throw it in a soup. But the carcass you can use as well. So you can use this carcass and throw it in a pot, cover it with cold water, and use it to make turkey stock. So I don't throw any part of it away. So I know some people like to chew on the wings a little bit. So we're gonna take these off. Again, you shouldn't be going through any bones. It's just the joints. And just like we did with the drumsticks, you can see this seam in the middle. If you find the right spot, you shouldn't be going through any bone, just the joint itself. So the last thing that we want to do is bring our gravy back up to temp. You want to taste it for seasoning. So good. We'll do a little bit of salt, some pepper. I think we're good to go. Fill our gravy boat here, and there we have our turkey and gravy. Let's give it a taste. It's a little bit smoky, perfectly seasoned, and so juicy. Be sure to check out our website, traegergrills.com/recipes for this recipe and many more, as well as the Traeger Grills app.